Hey there, and welcome to the first episode of The Van Show. So, the idea I had behind this was that I wanted a segment on my channel where I'm able to just kind of give my general philosophy and kind of a behind the scenes look on what it's like living in a van and just kind of share my thoughts that I'm having. So, to get into it, right, the first day when I set out, I left at around, I'd say, 5 in the afternoon, and then I just drove for 3 hours until I reached Sioux Falls, which was kind of the first big city along the general route I'm following. So that first night went pretty well, and I would say that it's almost because, you know, things were just going real fast, and I didn't have a lot of time to, process how I was feeling about everything. Um, and so, just kind of reached Sioux Falls, parked somewhere, went to bed, woke up, and then if you if you've already seen it, I have the day one vlog that I posted where I went and checked out the falls, went to Palisades State Park and Devil's Gulch, and that was a fun time. But after the cameras stopped rolling and I was moving on to the next location, I kind of started to feel a little bit weird. It was the initial rush of just, okay, I'm leaving, doing a new thing, had kind of begun to fade away. And I just started to feel pretty overwhelmed. And I bring this up because it reminds me of something I saw about a month and a half ago. There's this journalist, Tim Pool, who I don't know how long ago, but he started his own independent kind of politics, culture talk show. And that's on YouTube, and he has his own personal website, timcast.com. I highly recommend him. I think he does a really good job because he brings on a lot of different guests with different perspectives. And like I was saying a month and a half ago, he brought on this guest, Yeonmi Park, and she escaped North Korea and made her way to America. And during that interview, I remember one moment kind of stood out to me, and that is when when she first crossed the border from North Korea. She had this moment of realization in a sort of similar way that I had on the road, where she realized, for the first time in her life, she was in charge of her decisions. Because in North Korea, pretty much every single aspect of her life is, someone else's job to decide. It's pretty much just, hey, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And for the first time, after crossing the border, it was like, okay, now you have to make your own decisions. And she, the way she tells it, she was like, she felt so overwhelmed. She said, freedom is scary. And back then, before I had set out on my trip, I was like, huh, that's kind of interesting. But I didn't think that would apply to me necessarily. But then, that second night, I realized what she meant by that, and it's sort of like you have to learn how to trust yourself in a way that you've never had to before, where normally you can default and, like, you know, ask the person next to you, like, hey, have you done this thing before? You have a chance to kind of relay information. Or it's just, if you're traveling with other people, you have a wide range of skill sets that, like, maybe you're not good at, like, fixing a car or something, and it breaks down, and one of your friends is good at it, and he's just like, yep, okay, I'll do that. But when you're on your own, you're in charge of every single aspect of your life, and that made me feel very overwhelmed in that moment. But I mean, I obviously got over it, but I did feel a few times that night, you know, this sense of just turn back, Just go back to the safe life you had before. Like, this too much, just go. Back home you have a bed waiting for you, you have all the comforts, all the luxuries. But I made the decision. I'm like, no, I I risked a lot to be where I am right now, so I'm sticking it out. And I'm glad I did, because, the next day I immediately felt better. I was like, all right, we're going. But it's been an interesting journey, I'd say, just having to be totally self-reliant as opposed to like mostly, right? But after you cross that sort of that wave of doubt when you're first out there relying on yourself, once you realize the freedom that you have and you sort of live in that for a while, I noticed, at least for me, I started to gain a lot more confidence, and a lot of the things I used to be worried about just don't get to me anymore, because I'm like, well, yeah, I can just deal with it. Um, so a pretty good example of this is within the first week and a half, I had two mechanical failures in the van, and both of them required immediate attention because of security or just not being able to move. So the first thing that happened was, at the end of the first week, I wake up, pull up to a gas station to use the restroom, shut the door, the window, shoop, falls down. Great, great. So with that, if I don't fix the window, I have a security breach while I'm sleeping at night, where someone could easily just unlock the van, steal stuff, hurt me, I don't know. Or if it rains, it's gonna get in the van, make everything wet. More damage, more things I have to worry about. So, took apart the door, figured out what was wrong, and then, I had to rig something up, kind of makeshift, just to hold the window up, because none of the auto parts stores had the part. I had to order it and wait a little while. But so that was kind of like one of the first things that I had to really deal with on the road. And then I think it was 2 days later, I was just kind of cruising around. All of a sudden, check engine light comes on. And then I noticed the engine starts running pretty rough. And at this point, I was, kind of in a not so populated area. The closest town was like maybe a couple hundred people. So, really, not a lot of facilities, as I would soon find out when I called like the three mechanics in town. One of them was in the mountains on a service call, and like the other ones, they just said, "Yep, earliest we can get you in is a week from now." So then I had to deal with that, which resulted in me taking the risk of driving to a much larger town about 45 minutes away. And so the point I want to bring up with this is that me being self-reliant isn't me doing every single thing, right? Self-reliance a lot of the times means knowing where to source certain things, or or even being humble enough to say, "Hey, I'm, like I was having an engine issue. I'm not a very experienced mechanic. I can do a lot of the smaller repairs easy, but I haven't done that invasive of work on a car before. So I kind of just decided I'm going to let the professionals take care of this." So yeah, you're not, when you're independent, you're not it's not the world isn't on your shoulders. It's knowing, it's being like, it's more of being a manager of your life, I think, is what it really means to be free. Because I've heard a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I want complete freedom. I don't want to deal with anyone," right? But I think what people tend to miss with that is asking someone for help doesn't make you any less free. It just means you've admitted that you're out of your comfort zone and you need help. I mean, I think that's just all there is to it. There are, however, a lot of times when you need to be the one to be prepared or knowledgeable on certain things. Like, for instance, right now I'm in a part of the US that has a lot of black bears and grizzly bears. So for me to feel safe, I went through and reviewed like what the National Park Service says and what wildlife experts say on what you should do if you're confronted with a bear. So that's what I have to do to keep myself safe, because you can't force the world around you to change. You have to make yourself safe, right? And that's what frustrates me a lot just by talking to people is you hear a lot of sort of like, oh well, make just write a law, or just just make it make an agency, make it someone else's problem to deal with. And I think that's a really dangerous way of thinking, because you remove all of your own personal responsibility, right? It's kind of like the whole walking around at night debate that is on the internet so frequently, because you have people saying like, "Oh, it's all these horrible men out there. They're all doing this." And it's like, "Yeah, but it's just like that you've put yourself in a dangerous situation. I don't know what you're expecting, right? Like it's just not a smart idea." And there are people who are like, "Oh, I wish I could do this." And it's like, I mean, you're free to, but there's a risk there that you have to accept. Kind of like when I go on a national park trail up in the mountains here, I am accepting the risk that I might run into a grizzly bear. And rather than asking that, hey, I think all bears should be tracked and I need to know where they are so that if there's a bear near a trail, I won't go there. It's like, no, that's unreasonable. You can't force that kind of change, right? It's individual responsibility when you take these types of risks, where you have to keep yourself safe, not others doing that for you, right? And it kind of speaks to this sort of idea that I've been really thinking about and understanding more over the past year, and that's, personal responsibility is really important, because tragedy happens in seconds, but things like the government, like police, firefighters, ambulances, those respond in minutes. So if your goal is to be in a safer world, you can't just legislate that to happen. You have to be proactive in that sense, right? Like, I've learned first aid so that, if something happens to me, I'm not stranded there for 5 minutes, like maybe bleeding out or having a serious injury before an ambulance can show up. I've learned it so that something happens to me, I can deal with that immediately, because to rely on other people for the serious situations in your life, I mean, I think that's just foolish, because other people have their own things to deal with, right? Like, we saw this last year while there were all kinds of riots happening in cities around the US, where there were cases of people having a reason to call the police. They call the police, and the dispatcher tells them, "We can't help you. We're all our officers are busy right now." And it was moments like that last year that really kind of made me start thinking more independent and being like, yeah, no, the cops aren't always going to be there for me. Ambulances aren't always going to be there for me. Neither are firefighters, because at the end of the day, those are people that are dealing with things, and if there's something they're already dealing with, well, you know, I'm not gonna be some magical, like, priority for them, you know? I have to know how to deal with these things, so in the event that those services aren't available, I can still deal with stuff. And in much the same way you can't force the world to bend to your will, you also can't change a lot of things about yourself. Like, for instance, like disability. It's just a fact of life. It's not something that you should hide behind or use as an excuse. It's something to be overcome because everyone has their own problems, everyone has their own issues. So I don't think that it's right to just sit there and be like, oh, I can't, I can't do things because I'm different, because you can. And there's a fantastic example of this on the internet. There's this creator, his name's Ricky Berwick, and he was born very disfigured, but he managed to learn how to play video games, learn how to upload things on YouTube, and just be an internet creator like any regular other person, And I find that to be extremely inspiring because, he did all that in spite of this, like the circumstances of his birth, And I think that's something more people should look up to instead of just using immutable characteristics as an excuse, because I don't think that's fair, because everyone has been dealt their own set of cards in life, and to just say I'm not going to take the time to learn how to play the hand I've been dealt, I think it's just kind of sad in a way, and I wish more people would put in the effort, because all of life's greatest opportunities are hidden behind great struggle and a lot of hard work. You're not gonna find some extreme breakthrough amazing success just by smoking weed and playing video games in your mom's basement, right? You have to put yourself out there, and you have to put in a lot of work. I mean, that's what I've been learning here. I mean, for Christ's sake, I've spent a lot of time figuring out even this simple little video, right? Because I want to make something that I can be proud of looking back. I realized that there's a lot of negativity out in the world today, and I see it getting to my friends. I see it getting to just people walking down the street. You can feel it, that something's not going right. So I just want to kind of be a voice of positivity, and to have a message to say that, you can do these things, right? If you asked me a year ago, hey, would you believe that you'd be sitting in a van hundreds of miles from home making content for YouTube, I would have said, no, I don't think I'm capable of that, right? But somewhere down the line in the past year, I started to think more to myself like, hey, there's one thing that all successful people have in common, and it's that they believe that they can, right? Because both the man who says he can't and the man who says he can, both of them are right. And it's that type of, it was that realization that got me on a path of like self-improvement. And I mean, I've gained a lot of confidence since then, and I really want to bring that out to the rest of the world and, encourage people to say, I can, rather than it's too hard, I can't, right? Because I think it's a great tragedy in life that people will not seek the greatest version of themselves because there's hard work involved. Just to kind of wrap it up here, I would say that fear is like a mirror that shows you what you need to work on about yourself. And I understand that irrational phobias and PTSD, that's a completely different type of fear in their own different ways, but the fear I'm talking about is the little part of you that keeps you in bed in the morning or stops you from turning down a new street on your walk home. You know, it's the apprehensiveness towards the unknown, right? That I think when people start to confront that, it snowballs into real success and confidence, you know? And for you, the viewer, I guess I would challenge you to kind of think about that and look inwards, and the next time you feel yourself, not wanting to do something for seemingly not a very good reason, it's just kind of like I don't want to, like that kind of nervousness. Like maybe it's speaking in front of people or, trying something new. Just go for it. Just take a step in the direction, right? Like, I didn't get to be sitting in this van in a day. It took weeks longer than I even planned, right? My original plan started out in February, and I was like, I'm gonna head out by the end of May. It's nearly September right now, so, it's about taking a step in a direction and accepting that, I'm forging my own path, because if you're not constantly working on yourself and trying to be better, then what are you really doing? You're just kind of sitting and festering, not dealing with any of your issues. I mean, I don't see the point in embracing the status quo when the only way you're going to be the great vision of yourself that you have in your head is by putting yourself out there and doing things that you haven't done before. So just embrace the unknown. Let go. Let go of the routines, the regular stuff you do, the comfort, because there's a big wide world out there that it's gonna challenge you. It's gonna put you in situations that you're not prepared for. But through getting through all that, you become so much more confident in yourself. And you start picking up on more and more skills and just becoming a much more well-rounded individual. And that's the type of energy I think the world desperately needs, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I just want to be a voice of positivity in an ocean of negative junk, And it's like any number of absolutely crazy tragic things could happen to you in a day. So what's the point in living in fear all the time? Because you have no control of these things. So you better just learn how to navigate through life. Before I end this video, I'd just like to impart a little bit of wisdom on you, and that is memento mori, carpe diem. Remember that you could die at any point, so seize the day while you still have it. Thanks for watching. Have a great one.